Let's say you've got a business and you're ready for it to get to the next level. Let's talk about Platinum Black. Okay, so who are they? They're a strategic marketing and advertising consultancy built for teams who already have strong instincts, but want a partner to help them go bigger and move faster. I know these people. They're terrific. I've worked with them before, and Platinum Black works alongside in-house teams to uncover new growth opportunities, sharpen strategy, and create the kind of work that really drives business forward. So if you're ready for that, check them out at platinumblack.com. Think you'll be glad that you did. And now, here's the show. Welcome to Let's Bring It In, the podcast about creative leaders doing great work in-house. I'm Greg Christensen, and my guests today are Erin Lewis, Vice President of Marketing and Brand Engagement, and Brandon Ankney, Director of Brand Identity and Creative for the NBA's world champion Oklahoma City Thunder. We talk about what it means to run an NBA marketing team like a traditional ad agency, how you build a brand when performance isn't guaranteed, teams can win championships or fail to make the playoffs, they're still the product, and how the Thunder have created one of the most loyal fan bases in sports by focusing on identity, community, and consistency. We also get into the realities of leading an in-house team, building systems that scale, and creating content at the speed of culture. Whether you're a writer, art director, designer, creative director, or an NBA fan, you're going to love this episode. Here's my conversation with Erin Lewis and Brandon Ankney. Erin Lewis and Brandon Ankney, welcome to Let's Bring It In. This is going to be a great episode because we are going to talk about the world champion Oklahoma City Thunder. This is great.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited. This is always fun when we get an opportunity to do something like this and do it, especially with somebody like yourself. So we're excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, Erin, let's start with you. Tell us what your role is with the Thunder, and then Brandon, tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I am the Vice President of Marketing and Brand Engagement. We think about marketing a little differently here at the Thunder than some of our counterparts in the NBA and just sports in general. What we've found over the last several years, and really about the time when I joined the organization, sports marketing was really sort of undergoing a transformation, and it's continued over the last decade or so to be a bit more agency-like for a lot of reasons. And so when I joined the organization in 2016, they were certainly sort of headed down that path, and we've just continued to grow and evolve since then. And so I share that just to sort of to set up what it is that I do, because it might be a little bit different than a traditional VP of marketing. And I have a background in the agency world. I was a brand strategist for many years, which is how I know Greg from the Richards Group. But because of my background in brand strategy, have really brought to the organization just this need and importance for the brand to lead every single thing that we do, for us to really have a really solid sense of self and solid sense of our promise and understanding what it means in each and every function of the enterprise. And so that has been foundational in the way that we think about what we do. And again, not just being confined to marketing or branding or creative. And so we have adopted, like I said, an agency style approach here. We have, for all intents and purposes, every discipline and function that a creative agency and studio has. So I oversee a lot of that. So the easiest way that I explain it to people really is to say that I oversee a collective of strategists and a collective of creatives. And so that's exactly what it is. And it's everything from brand strategy to creative strategy, media strategy, marketing strategy. And then on the other side with creative, it's everything from, like I said, creative strategy and identity to content and some of the in-game content, digital in-game content as well. So it's a wide spectrum, but it's a lot of fun. That's what makes it interesting on a daily basis.
And then Brandon, you're on the creative side, right?
Yes. So yes, I'm Director of Brand Identity and Creative. So just a fancy way of saying creative director around here. It's a little bit of leading the creative teams and all the different creative initiatives for the team. But there is also a little bit of brand management in there as well, because, whenever you're a sports team, there's a lot of partnerships. There's a lot of collaborations with other groups. And so a lot of what my job has turned into over the years is really setting up systems, setting up the creative campaigns, and then also making sure all the different groups stay in alignment within those campaigns, right? So it's pushing the groups further like a traditional creative director role, but it's also making sure that people are interpreting some of our briefs and some of our strategies in the correct ways.
Yeah, there's a lot
So
of
what?
brain governance in what we both do. In fact, just as a real time example, we've spent a lot of time in the last 24 hours talking about how we equip the entire enterprise. So think about everybody from accounting to HR, people and culture to guest relations and all the content and creative in between. How we can really bring the playoffs campaign idea, core idea to life in those different disciplines. So
Mm,
again, brand governance is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, a lot of that's
yeah,
done through how we're setting up like design systems and just toolkits for other
yeah,
groups. So it's making that a little bit easier for them because we tend to exist in a space that's a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more abstract, and sometimes a
yeah.
little difficult to like really grasp onto that. And so we try to set up, just like, decision trees, kits and things like that. So whenever someone's going through and trying to be like, I got to write something to a sales, for a sales flyer I'm doing, they'll be able to refer to these documents and these manuals and things that we're working on to help be able to democratize the work a little bit. Because
Yeah.
what we found over the years is like there is a mountain of work, as most people in this industry know. And the more we can do to like equip others to be able to make smart decisions towards like our campaigns and our strategies, it just makes things move a little bit more smoothly for the whole organization. There's also that
Yeah.
buy-in. If you're creating it yourself, you have that buy-in, and so
Hmm.
you kind of evangelize it yourself.
Yeah. I want to get into your backgrounds a little bit. Like Brandon, do you come from an agency background, or like what was your education? How did you end up being the
No,
creative director for the Thunder?
yeah, it's interesting is I was an intern at the Thunder. That was my first job, and I just stuck around ever since. Which a lot of people say that's a bad move, especially in the creative space where most people move like every 3 to 5 years, right? But
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I was in college about the time the team was getting here, and I was was like, hey, that would be something I think I'd be really happy with, and found an internship through Craigslist of all things. If that tells you
Wow.
anything. And ended up sticking around after that. Did a few stints of production work, just freelancing for a few years.
Hmm.
Over because I was around the recession, and then ended up landing a full-time gig. When something opened up for me. And ever since then, just stuck around. But Aaron heard me say this a lot. I mean, it's felt like 4 different jobs over that time, right?
Mm,
Because
yeah.
just how the organization has evolved and just how just actually our industry has evolved over that time, right?
Yeah.
I remember just building, early in my career, just building posters for like a local grocery store. And now we barely even touch that kind of project,
Yeah.
And so it's all just like digital system based and just like how we're just equipping each other to like be successful now.
Yeah. So about 16 years ago, I moved to Dallas, and that's where I met Erin. You were one of the first people I met at the Richards
Yeah.
Group. I think day one, I probably met you when we got briefed on a Home Depot assignment.
Yeah.
So super fun to reconnect here. We worked together for a long time, but give us your background. Tell us how you went, even before the Richards Group. That can be part of the journey, but how did you end up at the Thunder?
Yeah.
You're from Oklahoma, aren't you? Aren't you originally from
Yeah.
Oklahoma?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm from Oklahoma. I'm not from Oklahoma City. I'm from a little town just south of here, a suburb called Norman, which is where the University of Oklahoma is.
Yeah.
And went to the Richards Group right after college, where I spent about 10 years. And I was there as a strategist, as I mentioned a moment ago, and had the absolute honor of working on a variety of clients from Home Depot, which was the majority of my time. Helped bring Fiat to the United States, worked on Dodge Ram a little bit, worked on Chick-fil-A a little bit, worked on MD Anderson a little bit, worked on some smaller regional clients here and there. But what that really taught me was that building a strong brand is a transferable skill. And I didn't have any
Mm,
experience in sports. And I remember when I was interviewing, actually, that was one of the first questions was, what experience do you have in sports? And I said, absolutely zero. But I don't think it matters because I know how to build a strong brand and I know how
mm,
to foster affinity among a group of people. And I was in Dallas and I was feeling a little bit restless. I mean, Brandon referenced a moment ago just how normal it is for people in the creative world and the agency world to hop around. And so I was feeling a little anxious. I hadn't done that. I was there for a decade almost. And there was an opportunity that arose here at the Thunder. And that was in 2016. And so for years, the 8 years prior, but also particularly that year when they were in the finals, I had watched from afar. this fan base, which my family and friends back home were part of. But I was always so intrigued by the fan base. And as a strategist, I mean, that probably makes a lot of sense, but there was something really unique in this group of people that this affinity and this loyalty that I saw that I didn't see anywhere else. I mean, I was in Dallas with many other professional sports teams, and there was just something really unique that I didn't see elsewhere. And so I was
Hmm.
always really intrigued by it. I always said that I wouldn't really come home for any other brand other than the Thunder. And there was an opportunity that arose, and it felt like it was a really good fit. As I said a moment ago, they were looking to sort of expand more into the agency style space and add some new disciplines to the team. And so when I got here, we even determined that it was appropriate to take my skill and background and evolve the role a little further than it was originally intended. So it's really, it was the opportunity to be a part of something really special, to study something really special that I saw happening from afar. But also, this is a brand that means a lot to this community in ways
Yeah.
that you probably don't see in other markets. That's one of the benefits, honestly, of being one of the three smaller markets in the NBA.
Yeah.
Um, it means a lot, and so it's beyond professionally being part of this organization means being able to give back to the place and the people that raised me, to be part of something that is such a cultural driver, economic driver, driver of development. And so tomorrow, actually, we're breaking ground on a brand new arena, which will open in 2028. And so to know that I get to have my fingerprints on something like that, that is going to change the course of history in this state, being a part of a championship NBA team, growing up as kids in Oklahoma, like we didn't think that that wasn't even on our
Yeah.
radar, honestly.
Yeah.
So to know that I have a hand in that really meant a lot and was a particular pull and drawback for me, in addition to just being back here with family and friends.
Yeah. Is it true? I'm trying to remember if this is, I believe that the Thunder kind of got started after Hurricane Katrina. Didn't the displaced, maybe they were the Hornets back
They
then. I
were,
don't
Yeah.
know if they
yep,
were the Pelicans yet. They started playing in Oklahoma just so they could keep playing. And they realized, oh my gosh, like people are showing up to games. We could actually have a team here.
yeah,
And
that's
then
exactly,
that's when they brought down the Seattle Supersonics, right? And made them
yeah.
the Thunder.
That's exactly right. A couple of years ago, we had a really fun full circle moment. That's a mouthful. With Chris Paul, who played here with the Hornets, and then he came back and was on our roster for 2 seasons,
I
I think.
believe it was one.
One or two seasons. One of
Yeah.
those was in the bubble, so it's a little bit muddy
Yeah.
back in 2020. But so there was a full circle moment where he started here and then got to come back here and play a portion of his career here. And so to your point, Greg, like I said it a moment ago, I was recognizing something unique about this market and fan base, and the ability to support an NBA team, and others saw it as well. And that was the moment that they did. And so we are a state that is divided by two collegiate football teams.
Yeah.
And so we have a real collegiate vibe here, and that plays into our benefit
Yeah.
quite a lot.
Yeah.
Does it help that I mean, Oklahoma City is a smaller market. I mean, in Dallas, if the Mavs aren't doing well, you can root for the Rangers. If the Rangers aren't doing well, you can root for the Stars. The Cowboys tend to struggle, so but people still root for them. But I mean, you've got all of these different sports teams, but I grew up in Salt Lake City, and like the Jazz are all we had, so we were all in on the Jazz. Do you kind of find that with the Thunder as well?
Yeah, we certainly do. I think it's a little bit deeper than just being the only, uh, because there are so many people who remember Oklahoma City pre Thunder and post
Hmm.
Thunder, and really appreciate all that the organization has brought to the community, from the philanthropic events and efforts to putting our city and state on an international stage. Again, the economic development and cultural development and so forth. So it's been a true catalyst in this community, and there's a real strong appreciation for that. Oklahoma City is a really unique market in that people feel really deeply invested in seeing it thrive.
Hmm.
And so there's, again, an appreciation and sort of a civic loyalty that's embedded in our fan base that I don't think
Hmm.
that other cities get to see and experience. So that drives the affinity up and really anchors it in something that's meaningful and enduring, win or loss.
Yeah. Brandon, what do you, as the creative director, like, what do you strive for when you think about what you want the fans to feel when they see any aspect of the Thunder brand, whether that's a logo, a an LED board, whatever. Like, what do you hope the fans feel when they see that brand?
Yeah, that's a that's a loaded question, right? Because
Well,
there's a lot of things you can, because if you think about it, like some of it turns into, where they interacting with the logo,
mhm,
what's the space around it. But in the end, if you were to like just narrow it down to like one thing, it's just a sense of pride, right? Because I
mhm,
think what Aaron was getting to earlier is, the Thunder is a major like unifier within the state, right? But it's also a great like representation of like the state. And because, not to say it's like chip on the shoulder,
mhm,
the Thunder represents everything that's like great about what's great about Oklahoma, right? The
mhm,
hard work, doing more with less, right? And just really, really just putting your nose down and getting the work done, right? And I think, growing up in Oklahoma, I'm from a small town. I didn't get into that in my intro, but I have like a single stoplight in my town, right? So there's
huh,
something really interesting about like this blue collar mentality. And it's not so much to the point to where it's like, oh, we are the toughest team in the league, but it's the one who celebrates the hard work and celebrates doing the work and finding small successes as they go. And I think
mhm,
that's something that really resonates with our market, right? And so that's where I think someone sees that logo, they're just instilled with a sense of pride, right? That, they
mhm,
reflect this team, this organization reflects my values and what I find to be, what's the right word to use? They reflect my values and what I find to be special about this place I live and I love.
mhm.
And so I think just, yeah, it really just comes out of that, right?
Yeah. Is "Always Onward," is that the line that's still kind of the rallying cry around the Thunder? Is that what you're still using?
It's really something that came to be as the result of a very specific moment in time.
Mhm,
I think it was 2018, 19, where we were starting to feel some shifts in our team's journey and in our fan base. And we didn't know it, but the world was about to change too.
hmm,
And so, as Brandon was saying a moment ago, like, this is a brand that really reflects the local values and personality as well. And that's important in the ways that it's able to resonate with our local fan base. And so we really took into account not only the moment in time, but also sort of the traits of Oklahoma and Oklahoma City. And there's a great deal of resiliency in that. We have a history of being a resilient people. And this team is no different than that in terms of like resiliency and fight and grit. Um, but there's also just this real mindset and mentality here of being forward looking, of not necessarily being afraid to fight or having a challenge, and maybe even looking at challenges as opportunities. And we really embrace that here. And so it was a combination and sort of a perfect storm of those things that was the catalyst for Always Onward. And it certainly was a campaign handle for us, and it gave us a creative platform to work from. More than anything, it was a mindset and an ethos that we tried to integrate into our organization. So we've really evolved beyond that moment in time, and it's not something that
mm,
we use very frequently right now. Outwardly, I would say, though, that it is still a mindset and an ethos that is ingrained into our organization just culturally.
Yeah,
yeah.
especially when you think about that from like a creative POV as well. You know, naturally with like sports and like how you think about sports creative and sports design, a lot of it's very nostalgic, right? A lot of it is
Mhm,
looking at
yeah,
the past, and while the Thunder, we don't have a very long past. And so that's not really a muscle we can flex very often, but we kind of look at it as a strength to be like, okay, well, how are we looking forward? How are we continuing to build? How are these experiences stacking to make us stronger as we go? Right.
mhm,
And so it's an interesting creative challenge to be sure, right? Because it's not the easy answer, which is, oh yeah, just pull this, cool thing that happened 20 years ago, throw it in a video, right? And
yeah.
you'll be able to sell the tickets, right? It's like, no, what's happening currently and how can we creatively tell those stories and solve those problems in a way that is still going to be excited, make someone excited to come to a game, right? we're not
Yeah.
going to just market around, hey, what happened last night at the game? It's more about like, hey, what kind of equity are we building in the experience, right? In the ongoing experience.
Well, so I'm really interested in that because I think that marketing for a team in many ways is just so different than, selling a truck or selling a store or selling a soda because, performance isn't always guaranteed. I mean, the Thunder is coming off the dream year that anyone in the NBA, you want your team. I mean, SGA won the MVP, they won the championship. I mean, you can't get better than that. And they're having another really great year. But there have been ups and downs. Erin, you were saying, didn't you say you started 2 days after Kevin Durant
Yeah.
quit? And this
Yeah.
is years ago, right?
Yeah. This is
And
back
so,
in 2016. Yeah.
and that was when KD and,
Westbrook.
yes, Westbrook, they went to the finals, right?
Yep.
And so you've seen highs and then dips and then, amazing highs, and hopefully they keep on going up. But what's it like? James Harden, I'm sorry, that's the one that I was trying to
Oh,
figure
yeah.
out.
Okay.
But I mean, like championship level team, right? Not SGA's team, but still, like, what a great thing for the community. But a team might win a championship and, a star player gets MVP one year. And then, I mean, the Mavs, they won the championship with Dirk one year and then didn't even make the playoffs the next year. So knowing that there's kind of that variability, like what's it like building and marketing a brand in that kind of environment where you don't know, you can't control whether the team wins or loses for a season?
Yeah. Something that I often say to people when we're talking about these kinds of things, or when we have new people join our staff, I actually reference back to like my Chick-fil-A days. And I'll say, like, Chick-fil-A has an incredible level of consistency. You know what a chicken sandwich is going to taste like every single time you take a bite, regardless of it's in Oklahoma or in LA. And we don't have that luxury. Like, performance isn't guaranteed, just as you said. And so we recognized early on, thankfully, that, and I'll also step back and just say, when you're thinking about something like a retailer, a Home Depot, for example, that's a very functional promise to your consumers. But in sports and in live entertainment, and in our case in particular, there's an opportunity, and it's really more based in, it's more like personal, right? It's more emotional. It's more community driven and based, and it's based in identity and really living life alongside of our fans. And so we recognized early on the importance of thinking beyond wins and losses, and really
Mm.
grounding, having a strong sense of self to begin with, but then also grounding ourselves in that sense of self, being unwavering in that, and really making sure that we were connecting with our fan base in ways beyond whatever the roster looked like and whatever happened on the court the night before. So that's why it's particularly important for us to make sure that we have developed a brand that has a local resonance that is strong, but also feels appropriate for an international stage.
Mm.
So we had to train our fans also just from an early time. I mean, we were the first NBA team here, and so while there were some NBA fans here, in large part, that people have had to kind of learn the ins and outs of the NBA, and
Huh.
so we had the fortune of being able to sort of train them in that, but also train them not to sort of over index on any one player or moment or season even, and really be more
Mm.
focused on the continuum and the entire journey of what it means to be an NBA fan.
Yeah, because I
To
think. Oh, go ahead. Correct.
no, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, because before the Thunder was here, the Oklahoma was purely a football market, right? And so
Yeah,
when you think about it through that lens, it's you lose one game, it crushes your season,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
It's like, oh yeah, there's nothing you can do with it from there. NBA is a different beast, right? You have 82 games a season, you're going to drop one. And so a
Mhm.
lot of those early days are being like, listen, it's not the end of the world if you drop a game. You're going to drop some games. No one has a perfect season, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that is like that early work we did on tempering the market, so they understand
Mhm.
like, uh, because people are learning the game. And even if you watch a lot of college sports, the NBA is a different sport completely, right? You see a lot of
Yeah.
Twitter accounts out there talking about what's a travel, what's not a travel, right? Well, there are different rules for both games, right? And so you just have to
Yeah.
make sure you understand that with how that works. But, you know, again, I think to Aaron's point earlier, that was an advantage to the Oklahoma market though, because there's so much more passion and drive that you see coming from those fans who feel like they are directly connected so closely to your brand and so closely to your product, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I joke whenever I bring on new creatives and designers, like, listen, working for a sports team is amazing and also frustrating at times, because it's amazing because you skip that step of loyalty, or, unwavering loyalty, right? People immediately
Mhm.
love you just because you're a sports team in their community, right? But with that, the other side of that coin is people are very opinionated about everything you do, right? And so you have to find like that nice, balance between the two. There's a tension, but I think that's what's special about sports, right? That's what's special about, what we do, right? It connects with people inherently at their core, right? And so if someone's passionate enough to write a comment, at 2 a.m. about, something you made, it's kind of a special position to be in.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
ownership in it. And
Mhm.
that's the thing where it gets back to the pride you were mentioning a moment ago, Brandon, but
Yeah.
also, when they feel that strongly that they have a significant part in this thing,
Yeah.
it just means a lot more to them.
Yeah. So, Erin, you were saying that you basically run the Thunder the way, an ad agency might run. Do you partner with outside design firms? Do you have agency partners, or is it completely contained in-house?
For the most part, it's contained in house. There are times when we have just absolutely hit creative capacity and we can't
Mhm.
take on anything else, and we have some freelancers that we'll work with. There are times that special projects will arise and we will work with an outside agency. And then there are times when we have like really big initiatives and we need experts to come alongside us and help us when we don't have, though we may be capable of the entire bandwidth needed to take on such large projects. So I would say 85 to 90% is contained in house. And then you've got a smaller
Mhm.
percentage that we look outward. And generally speaking, we're always going to look here in our local market first.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, that's what you do,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What types of production capabilities do you have? Like in terms of if you're doing, I don't know, I imagine you do TV commercials, but I imagine you've got all your social media platforms, and I imagine you have billboards or posters or signage or something. Like how is the communication made?
Yes. All of those things. It's a really wide spectrum. I'll let Brandon
Yeah.
answer it.
I mean, it's pretty much across the gambit. We pretty much have a specialist that can do most of these things that you listed, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, whenever you start getting into things that are like really nitty gritty, like building like, custom apps, or things like that, we're not going to have that in house because there's not really much of a use for something like that. That would be one of the special projects Aaron's working through, But overall, I mean, when it comes from creative disciplines, all the way from 3D artists to motion designers to copywriters to graphic designers, every single type, to creative strategists, to every single type of strategy you can think of, most of it falls under our wheelhouse. It really comes down to, we also have to manage the game flow as well. So think about all the production that goes into every single game, all the video production that goes into that. And so if we have something like on the brand side to where we say, oh, we need to create this special video touch point or the special commercial, sometimes we'll have to be like, all right, we got to bring in some outside firepower to be able to run the shoot and run all of that, just because our in-house crews are all set trying to produce a game or trying to produce something around the game, you know, because so often now sports teams, they are a complete media studio on top of just a sports team, right? And so,
Yeah, yeah.
especially how social media has evolved over the years, is like, pretty much every team has to have a signature, uh, a signature series that's just talking about how, your little Netflix, series, right? About like
Yeah.
how the season is going, helping tell that story of the season, and personify the team a little bit to be a little bit more relatable to the fans.
Yeah.
Uh,
So like I said, it runs the gamut from traditional media, so out of home, to whatever we're putting on our digital ads. That could be static, that could be video, all the in-game content, um, all the things. But then also, we're creating the environment here in the arena as well. And so
mhm.
from top to bottom, we have to think about how we're bringing our brand to life in this physical space, and have some really specific objectives about what we want fans to think, feel, and how we want them to behave here. So adding that experiential element on is something that has been really fun, I think, for all of our groups, not just here in the arena, but just thinking about in-market activations and sort of guerrilla marketing and those kinds of things. So it really does run the gamut.
Yeah, what I'll say is like sometimes creatively it's a tough pill to swallow too, because you see this big cool project, this big shiny project, like, oh my gosh, that's like a dream. I want to work on that. That is really cool. We could do something really interesting with how we develop that. But then it's like looking at how the production schedule looks, you're like, there's no way that we could handle that in-house, right?
Mm,
And so that's something
yeah.
where we need to bring in the extra firepower to be like, while this is something I would love to do, it's also just in a logistics standpoint, doesn't make sense to handle in-house.
Yeah. It's interesting to me thinking about sports because you're not just trying to get them into the stadium, like, with Home Depot or Walmart or KFC, whatever, like you're trying to get them into the store or the restaurant.
Mhm.
But even after you get them into Paycom Arena or the new one that you're building, like you're still doing, I imagine, I don't know if, but like you do hype videos and you do the lighting that goes around and between quarters, or if there's a timeout, you've got something on the jumbotron. So with sports, I feel like in one sense there's your brand, so you're going to advertise and communicate the thunder, but there's also kind of an aspect of news too, right? Because someone could break a scoring record, someone could win SGA wins the MVP or is in the MVP hunt before he actually wins it. When you make the playoffs, that's news. So do you have to translate or balance, the speed of what's going on with the emotion and the momentum of the campaigns that you're putting out?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk a lot about just sort of the rhythmic nature of our business and um, how we really like tune in and dial things up when and where appropriate and when we pull back and let it breathe. So
Yeah.
Brandon's probably better equipped to answer the question, but certainly it does. We got to be really smart too about how we're using each of our platforms in a really distinct way.
Yeah, I mean, sports is always on 24/7, right? It
Mhm.
never, you a lot of people, like fan habits, they go to the game, they're excited after a win, they go hit up, all the different social media apps, see what people are talking about, the big, that buzzer beater or whatever, or they're hitting up the blogs, or they're going to their favorite podcasts, and so it's ongoing at all times. And so it's actually advantageous for like a sports brand to like position themselves as like a lifestyle brand, right?
Mm.
So you're constantly in like the flow of conversation, constantly in the flow of like thought, right? Because it is like live sports is such a big thing right now, especially with how streaming and TV and everything is playing out right now. And so sports is a hot commodity. But how we position it internally is we like to think about it as like you're always a Thunder fan no matter what you're doing, right? It's just at what
Mhm.
level are you at being a Thunder fan, right? And so that's where when someone comes through the door, we're like, all right, this is where we ratchet it up to where they're going through the door all the way to their seat to become Loud City, like a member of Loud City, right?
Yeah.
And then, as they leave, they have the best experience of their life, hopefully. And then as they're leaving, they're like, I want to take this feeling with me. So we try to be pretty intentional about how we're messaging around that, right? And, that's where we jokingly would say things like thunder never stops and things like that. Like as you're walking out the door, you still feel that thunder feeling even as you're going to your car, right?
Yeah.
Because I know, like, as a fan, because I've gone to a lot of Thunder games over my time, I remember that 2012 run where we went to the finals. And I just remember walking out of the arena. And this is a testament to our fans, by the way. Like they do this unprompted. It's just for their love of sport and their love of competition, right? Walking out to my car, there's like some train tracks going over a bridge in Bricktown, and that's where a lot of people would park back then. And you walk through one of those tunnels, and it was deafening with how people would just be like chanting like OKC like over and over again, right?
Hmm.
And so you think
Yeah.
about that, you're like, that is like a great feeling, like as a community and like as a fan base to like just feel like you're part of that, right? And so there's just something
Yeah.
really interesting about taking that feeling and keeping it with you all the time. That I don't know too many things beyond sports that can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you manage your team, your creative team, in terms of like who's going to do the hype video, who's going to work on the social media uh, post because we just found out that so and so had the most triple doubles of the month, or something like that. How do you manage your creative team?
Yeah, that's a good question. um, I wish it were more sophisticated than what I'm about to say, but really it's whoever's got the time, right?
Yeah.
We have a pretty large workflow at all times. And obviously there's people who are better at some things than others, right? And so you obviously will, bring in someone who specializes in these things, right? So you try to keep their plates clear for those things that come in. But a lot of times you just have to be really collaborative and really flexible, right? And
Hmm.
so you have to just be ready to like pivot immediately. And sometimes it turns into, okay, we need to pull someone off of a project so they can work on this thing they're better at. And then someone else just has to pick up the slack. And so that's one thing that our team is really, really, really talented at, is just being incredibly collaborative and just, ready to take any kind of like challenge that's coming their way. And even, there's a little bit of sometimes you get pulled off a project. That's never a good feeling, right? But,
Hmm.
having the understanding on the front end, like, listen, this is going to also, you'll be on the other side of this coin at some point, right? And so,
Yeah.
it just has to be one of those things. It's like, you, we just have to be able to move fast, really, is what it comes down to. So it really just comes down to availability.
I would also say
Yeah.
that we have very specific departments. So we have a social media department. We have a with Thunder Vision, which is all of our in-game digital content. We've got broadcast, and they handle all the other videos. So we've got pockets of people designated to each of those things, and we also have a brand operations team and our project managers who are incredible and help us keep our heads on straight every day.
Yeah.
And we'd be
Yeah.
up creek without them. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And that's why we're so systematic in like the way we work, right? Like that's why we lean really heavily into like system design, and we're trying to set up the tightest systems as possible and trying to
Yeah.
make sure that they are functional above all else, right? Because that also makes it a lot easier to be able to jump in on someone else's work, or to be able to move a little bit be a little bit more efficient with your work.
Yeah.
And it's not about
What's your relationship?
fast; it's more about like how are you using the system to tell the story the right way.
Yeah. What's your relationship with the NBA? I've got to assume that the NBA has creative services and they probably have a creative director. Do you collaborate? Do they ever come in and say, this is what we want for the league as a whole? Do they leave you alone? What's both, Erin, for you in terms of running the whole department, and then also Brandon for you in terms of the actual creative? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, we have a great relationship with the NBA. We also have a great relationship with our counterparts across the league at different teams. We all know each other well, and we've built great relationships so we can call each other up and say, hey, I know you did this project recently. Who'd you use, or what'd you learn? So that's terrific. The league does a really nice job in making sure that they equip us with whatever we might need, whether that be data and insights, or general guidance, or connecting us with different counterparts across the league who are facing a similar challenge. Creatively, they always distribute to us whatever their guidelines are for any particular campaign, whether it be all star or playoffs or whatever. And it's really up to the discretion of the team to what extent, if at all, they choose to leverage that. Generally speaking, we don't, because we prefer to leverage our own brand and campaigns. Actually, I can't really think of a time when we've leveraged what the league is doing. There are times when we will reshare on social what they're doing, and they always appreciate that. But they really leave it up to the discretion of each team, understanding that each franchise has their own set of objectives and messages that they want to convey. So they're great about giving us our space.
Yeah. Yeah, on the creative side, like to Aaron's point, like we don't use a lot of like we usually create a lot of our own collateral for a lot of these things, like all star things like that. But it doesn't mean that we're not utilizing some of their assets in a way to elevate things. Like all star is a great example. A lot of times you will utilize those marks and logos to help elevate the experience or elevate the what message you're trying to tell, right? But
Yeah.
I think in the end, yeah, they're great partners. I will say, like, I love whenever they're sharing best practices across the league, right? They have a very high level view. And so we can be testing something, see best practices, and be like, oh, what if we tweaked it like 5% this way? It's obviously going to be a lot more successful in
Mm.
this way. So
Uh,
they have a great, I'll just give them a quick shout out. They have the great brand portal. It's so easy to find what you need. Oh, man.
yeah.
Worst thing is when you can't find a logo, and then it's so easy to find what you're looking for.
Um, I'm just curious, like, regardless of whether a team is a heated rival, or if it's whether they're winning or losing, what teams out there do you look at and say, oh, they're doing some really good communication in their market?
Um, we in part, we try not to look too much, if I'm being honest,
Mm,
because we have a really
yeah.
strong sense of self. We want to be inspired by the best brands in the world, not just those in sports or in our own league. That said, so we don't want to be overly influenced by any one team. We kind of want to keep our blinders on and keep our path forward. That said, we have, like I said, friends and colleagues and counterparts across the league, and there are things that each of the organizations are doing really well from a business perspective, a marketing perspective. There are some teams you would never know that they've got these really interesting structures in place behind the scenes to pump out really strong creative work. There's just so much behind the scenes that I think I think about and admire more than the output, which is
Mm.
not exactly what you're asking. So I apologize there, but I think my brain has just been sort of trained to go, okay, well, what's the structure of their agency? How are they thinking about it? How are they doing it? And I get really intrigued by that.
Yeah, Erin, d- she's right. Like, not very often I'll go to another like NBA team to look at. Oh, what are they doing? How is this? Because like in the end, like sports can be very homogenous, right? And it's
Hmm.
very reactionary, right? Because a lot of it just leans into trends and what's hot, right now, what's visually interesting. And we try to approach a lot of our work to be like, all right, what's the minimal amount of information we need to get the idea across, you know? And that's difficult a lot of times, but we find that a lot more in like general like agency work and brand work, with like
Hmm.
large companies, like the Coca-Colas and the Nikes and all the ones that everyone always lists, right? When it comes to like sports, though, personally, I'm going to say this personally, I probably find the most inspiration from like soccer teams,
Oh,
like when
yeah.
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah,
Then you got to think about the type of like environment we try to build is more towards that type of environment, right? To where everyone's together,
Yeah.
they're having a great time, and so that's where we build a lot more inspiration from like environmental.
yeah. There's a lot of
Oh, that's
parallel between soccer fans in Europe and the kind of fans we are looking to cultivate, and really the foundation of our fan base, anyway.
Yeah.
that's a really interesting parallel because I don't know any fans that are like the fans
Mhm.
who follow the Champions League.
There's a wild image, or there's a wild videos out there of some soccer games in Europe. It's pretty great to watch.
Well, it's interesting you brought up videos because I was thinking, so I grew up, I mean, this dates me, but I grew up as a Jazz fan during the Stockton and Malone era. And I would say I was a pretty diehard fan, even when they weren't winning. I mean, before they got to be any good. But if I wanted to hear a soundbite from John Stockton or something, it was either a post game interview or maybe, something on the news where they might, catch him in the locker room or something. But these days, I think because of social media, I mean, you were saying this earlier, Brandon, like you can do entire series throughout the season where you're interviewing people, you go behind the scenes, you see the locker room, you see someone at the practice arena. Uh,
Mhm.
Talk to me about how where the where sports storytelling is headed.
Yeah, we more and more we're seeing in our own organization and others across the league in particular, the NBA in particular, um, needing a function that is specific to just content ideation, production, oversight. And so it's certainly going in that way, like more in depth, more long form. I shouldn't say that, not necessarily long form, because we live in the age of TikTok, but I simply mean like it's moving at a rate that is faster than ever and requires more authenticity than ever. I think we see that fans are not wanting like the polished creative anymore. They're just wanting the proximity and sort of the
Mm,
closeness to the team and the players and even some cases the organization. I think we see fans being really smart too um about being able to seek out what is and is not authentic. And so they
mhm.
can sniff out things that feel forced or off brand. But man, when it works and it's right, it's really powerful. Um, so yeah, all that to say, I think we're just moving into a space with storytelling where it's just requiring more and more of us, and it's requiring entire departments to rise up and start to really articulate the type of stories that are being sort of coveted from fans.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is based, because if you're thinking about like these short form authentic pieces of content, right? as a brand, you still want to have that very strong North Star, right? That everyone
Mhm.
is marching towards, right? And a little more difficult to do in sports because, there's so many individuals that, make up the whole. But in the end, I think having that strong North Star is probably the best way to plan all pieces of content going forward. Like internally, we just call them platforms, right? Like we'll set up
Yeah.
platforms for campaigns and just say, all right, here's what we're trying to communicate and everything we're doing with this campaign. Then push it out to all the different teams and say, all right, now you need to start figuring out how to tell this story in your specification to the market you're trying to speak to. So
Yeah.
while it's nothing new there, we're finding that that's probably the easiest way to manage it while also keeping a consistent voice.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, are you on all social media platforms, or do you find uh, TikTok works, but Snapchat doesn't, or LinkedIn doesn't work so much, but we're going to put a bunch of time into Instagram? Like, how do you decide what you're on?
Yeah, there was a day when we were on everything, and then we went through some evaluation of what was actually worthwhile, what was a platform that had some type of return for us, whatever it might be, and then we added some things back in. So I think at this point we're on everything except for maybe Snapchat.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard. It's really hard to determine. It's really hard to um, it's really hard to also I guess this can be true about really anything, but I find it more so than ever in this space in sports. We talk about fandom, but um, everybody has a wide spectrum of their target audience, right? In our case, that's a fan base, but we're looking at a generational fandom. We're looking
Mm.
at when you're talking about Home Depot, for example, and it's homeowners, you're narrowing in on an age range, right? But
Mhm.
in fandom, we've got fans who are 5 and we've got fans who are 105. And
Yeah.
so it makes it really difficult to um, narrow down what social platforms in particular we need to be on because each one serves its own unique purpose. And so we've really embraced that more than anything, that the role each can play in each of these different generations' lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to, especially on the creative side, because I was part of the back then when you're creating everything for everything. So you're making 20 versions of every little graphic you make, every video you make, and it was production. It was not very much fun production wise. But what we do now is like you kind of have, segments within these, social media platforms, right? And so, if we're doing something on LinkedIn, it's probably going to be a little bit more professional based. It's probably going to be a little bit more about staff, there'll be some stuff and probably more community based, right?
Mhm.
Or just big things that are happening. Whereas if you're going to Instagram, that's probably where you're going to be finding a lot of our game stuff. That's where you're going to be finding a lot more things that are targeted towards like infographics and stuff and, quick highlight, cuts that are happening during the game. So
Yeah.
you can take a more strategic approach with how you're pushing the content to each of these channels. And that's kind of our strategy right now.
Yeah. I want to start to wrap things up because I know that you're both really busy and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I do want to ask if there's any, last bit of advice or anything that we didn't touch on. But I also, Erin, I do want to just hear what was it like to join when, like, right after KD decided that he was leaving? Like, that must have been a pretty interesting time in the organization.
Yeah, it really was. Like I said earlier, I think I accepted my job on like July 2nd, and he made the announcement he was leaving on like the 4th or something. And pretty soon after that, Brian Burns, our senior vice president of business operations, was calling and saying, "Hey, I promise we didn't dupe you. Like we didn't know, so please still come." And so it was a time of I think everybody going like, "Okay, what's next?" But thankfully, because the organization organizationally, culturally, but also when it came to marketing and branding, had a strong sense of self. And we weren't overly reliant on any one player already. So, the roster is a bit interchangeable. And so it was seamless in that sense. What was also really interesting about that summer is that I think it really fortified some of the loyalty among our fan base. I mean, it
Mhm.
gave everybody a common emotion to unify them, but just as angry as people were, and Brandon said a moment ago, I mean, if they're that angry this really means something to them. And if they
Mhm.
feel the emotions to the extent that they did, we're doing something right. But just as much as they were feeling some of those negative emotions, on the flip side of that, Russell Westbrook, um, you know, re-signed a contract and re-upped his commitment to Oklahoma City. And so we had something to like really channel a lot of that emotion into, from the
Mm.
negative to the positive. And so again, I actually think that it was a big benefit for our fan base. They are incredibly loyal. We call them the loud and the loyal for a reason. This place
Yeah.
that we're sitting in, this arena, um, the moniker is Loud City, and they really embraced that identity, and this gave them an opportunity and a reason to just like notch it up. So it was, many would think that it would be have been this like sort of, where do we go from here, we're lost, but really our fan base was there. They were behind us more than ever before, um, and that's when their loyalty and their commitment really shone.
Yeah.
Shine.
Once
Sh-
you,
Shine,
shine.
shine.
I don't know.
yeah. Once you build the new arena, is that going to be New Loud City?
Loud City will go wherever the fans
Yeah.
are. Loud
Yeah.
City is a moniker for a place, but it is also a spirit trait,
Yeah.
and it is an identity. And so fan base is in this, the Loud City is in this building, and it's also across the street at Scissortail Park when our fans are gathered there. Wherever one or more Thunder fan is gathered, there is Loud City. Yeah.
Right.
That's great. Brandon, any final comments?
No, just thanks. Hey, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. We just love to
Oh.
sit here and rap about sports, and just have a brand talk, like that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about, especially in-house, is, we're a brand team within a lot of different types of jobs, right? And so a lot of times,
Mm.
that's one of the challenges you can run into, especially as an internal team, is like, if I'm talking to Erin, she understands what I'm saying whenever I'm talking about branding, consistency, marketing, yada, yada, yada. But if I'm talking to someone whose job is to try to hype up a fan in the arena, they might not understand what I'm saying. They're like, why can't I just do this? Right. And so
Yeah.
that's a challenge that or a salesperson, right? They're not going to understand, a lot of that. And so I think what you're doing here is great. Like having like these types of internal in-house, conversations, because, when you shift from like agency to in-house, like there can be some major like culture shock that happens, Erin, you probably
Yeah.
felt it more than I ever have because I've been here my whole career, but there's just something, really great about that. So.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, I've got a final bonus question that I love asking all of my guests. I'll ask you, Brandon, and then I'll ask you, Erin. Totally different, nothing to do with sports. But if you were in an airport, you could go anywhere, choose any location, any destination, time and
Geez.
money aren't factors. Where would you go and why? And you each get one domestic location and one international location.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a tough one because I have 3 young kids, so I don't take vacations right now. And when I do, they're close. I guess starting with me, I have some great memories from when I was a kid going to visit an aunt out in Honolulu, and so I'd probably go there
Oh,
domestic.
okay.
Haven't been there since I was in first grade, so I'm overdue. And if I were to say somewhere overseas, I'd probably pick somewhere, probably like Sweden or something like that. Just, a few of there's some Instagram accounts that have just pulled me in. And I'm like, okay, I think I could do that. Once I got there, it'd probably be too cold, but, at least they're pretty in the accounts I saw. So
What is it about Sweden that
I
pulls you
think
in?
it's
That's
just,
fascinating.
you think I grew up in Oklahoma. The,
Yeah.
the town I'm from is called Birds Flat. Like it is literally flat as a pancake out there. So going to a place with some mountains like isn't so bad to me. I like seeing that. I love it. How expansive you can see, but I can appreciate a place with some great mountains.
Okay. Awesome. How about you, Erin?
this is hard. I would love more than anything right now, especially as we're looking to the end of the season and looking into the beginning of the postseason. I would love to be on a beach somewhere. Certainly lots of great international places, but I would probably say one of the Hawaiian Islands just to keep it domestic.
Yep.
Um, And I don't know why this was the first place that popped into my mind. And it's not the most exciting, and it's not really, I mean, it's international, but it's not across, an ocean. So it's probably a little bit of a boring answer, but I've been really thinking a lot about Banff lately and wanting to spend
Really?
time. Yeah. And wanting to spend time up there. We just came back from a ski vacation in Big Sky, Montana. So that might have helped inspire some of it. So I think like in this moment, I could certainly choose all the exciting stuff over in Europe, but I think I would choose to just be there, probably because that sounds really relaxing. That's the
Yeah.
commonality between both of the things I chose, right? Something that will just relax me,
Yes.
put me in a different state, flow state. I need to not think for a while.
Place without Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Is that what you
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know, Banff is on my bucket list too, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's
It's
great.
beautiful.
Well, Erin and Brandon, thank you so much. I appreciate you both taking the time. Thanks for sharing all of your insight and your experience with the Thunder. This has been great. And go Thunder. Can't wait to see them make a huge run again in the playoffs.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
That's it for this episode of Let's Bring It In. Huge thanks to Erin Lewis, Vice President of Marketing and Brand Engagement, and Brandon Ankney, Director of Brand Identity and Creative for the world champion Oklahoma City Thunder. If you want to hear more conversations with creative leaders doing great work at in-house places like Liquid Death, Whole Foods, Tony's Chocolonely, NASA, and more, visit letsbringitin.com. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show, subscribe wherever you listen, share it with someone who'd appreciate it, and leave a comment or a review. It really helps more people find the show. Our theme music was composed by Nick Patronella. You can find more of Nick's work on Vimeo. And of course, thanks to you for listening. Let's Bring It In is a production of Barnes Creative Bank at barnescreativebank.com.